Welcome to Carolina Sculpture Studio. My name's Clint Button, and I'm a granite sculptor. And welcome to video number 28 of the virtual stone carving apprenticeship. Let's talk about pointing machines today. There's a lot of different configurations of pointing machines. If you remember from earlier in the series, I said that the first job I did during my apprenticeship was Gary handed me a hand machine and a chisel and said, open up that niche, show me. So I did. The second job, he got out his pointing machine, which is very similar to this one, and set me up with a plaster model of the Blessed Mary, Praying Mary, half length, and I pointed the job. And he did that to teach me where the job existed in the stone. Because one of the biggest problems that I think people have is they don't know where to place something in the stone. I think more stone has probably been wasted over the history of mankind by people just trying to find what they were looking for in the stone instead of actually being shown where it was and then doing a good job with it. And so I want to help y'all get there efficiently. So my advice is buy a pointing machine. A pointing machine will cost you $300 or $400. Which, you know, if you go do any kind of carving workshop, you're probably going to spend the same kind of money, and you're probably not going to get a big result for many of them like you can with a pointing machine. You'll have the pointing machine to use for the rest of your career, and you don't have to copy everything, but you can put together a figure or an object in space and then finish it direct if you want. You don't have to copy everything. But it will teach you how to use that stone instead of digging away half an inch of stone to find detail that actually was right on the surface of that stone, and now you've wasted all that stone and all that time. So I'm not going to show you how to use the pointing machine today. We'll do that when we get into the angel, and that's on the way, but we got to get started on the clay. So we want to talk about these first, and then we'll move on to the next video. This is Dario's pointing machine that he brought over from Italy. This is an old-fashioned style. I don't really know which one came first. The big benefit of this pointing machine is the narrow chassis. So if you're pointing something like right now, I've got the hook on top in order to hang it to do a bust or a face or something. You've got a very narrow crochet or frame or chassis so that it's very easy to reach detail that may be behind it, because you have to approach the detail from a very specific direction. You want to be perpendicular to the tangent. You can't just touch it. You want to be perpendicular to the tangent so you've got the most free space around it. So hopefully you won't damage neighboring detail, because once you take that volume off, it's always gone. There are a few things about this machine, though, that I don't necessarily like. This machine has, and I'll try to get close-ups on all this stuff, it has a very long, very lightweight stylus stop. It has a little needle. The way a pointing machine works is you have identical points, foundation points on the job and the model, and you put this on the model, and you adjust your needle, your stylus, until it touches the stone. You set your stop, then you slide your needle out, stylus out, put it on the job, and you cut it until it fits. And you do that over and over again to duplicate that model into the job. But this machine, I think, it has some benefits with this narrow chassis, and it's easy to extend it. It's fairly lightweight. But this stylus stop is relatively lightweight and it's very long, and so it doesn't always drop easy. It's apt to snag or cantilever depending on if you're not at a real strong vertical, and so you have to push or pull to get it to move. And the problem you run into is that this thing flexes a lot, and that flex you can capture that flex by mistake or not account for it when you put it on the job and it does flex, and that can lead to a flaw in that actual point. This also has a lot of joints. has a joint here and a joint here, and a ball joint here, and another joint here, so that if you want to move this arm, you may have to loosen 2 or 3 different things, and it just collapses. And so it can really slow down your work. And to me, that frustrates me, because when I talk about working slow, I'm talking about working careful. I'm not talking about impeding your progress. You want to be able to work as fast as you can while you're not making mistakes, and you'll progressively get faster and faster as you work. I'll put video in here of Andy's machine. Andy inherited Phil Paini's pointing machine when Phil died. And it has an extra joint up in this area with a couple of knobs, and you can release one of them, and this whole arm will hinge out of the way. It's a breakaway. So it flips out of the way, so you can set this on the job, check your point, you got to take off a little more material, you turn that screw, flip it out of the way, and turn the screw, and the chassis stays right in place where you carve off that last little bit of detail and check it. And so that can speed things up a lot versus having to take this and hang it somewhere without bumping it, because that's what we normally have to do. So that's one option. I think I found those for sale in Europe. If you go on the internet and search Milani 2-stick or Milani 2-bar pointing machine, it'll come up, and it has a very similar looking joint in the machine, which I assume that's what it is. I haven't written to them. It's in, I don't know, it's a different language website. Didn't find an easy translation. I haven't called them or emailed them to see if that's what it is, but that's what it looks like. The more typical pointing machine that you'll run into is this. And for the vast majority of the work, I prefer this one. You'll find people that talk about pointing machines, and they've usually got one or have used one. It's not as common to find people that use several of varying designs, and I've just been fortunate. I've even enlarged work with a pair of pointing machines where we went on a grid and kind of like an enlargement frame and took a measurement out with one and translated it with a different measurement with the other pointing machine. One of them was with this pointing machine. We only did it once. It was an experiment. That's why we only did it once. It kind of worked, but it was a pain in the butt. So you can enlarge the pointing machines. I don't recommend it. But anyways, you have to make a wooden frame or chassis for your regular pointing machine. Traditionally, I was taught you use nails. And you drive a nail through the end of your board, for your 3 foundation points. You'll have 3 nails. And then you got to figure out some way, because what happens when you're on and off and on and off and on and off is that your nail can loosen and come out. And people put, I was taught to putty it all up with plaster. Okay, plaster isn't strong like that. I didn't think it made any sense. Some people put glue around them. Glue costs money. A tub of epoxy is expensive in my perspective, so I don't do it. It's a lot cheaper to get a little piece of wood, drill a couple holes, and then either use a couple of nails, drive it through and clinch them, get them down through and bend it over, or better yet, use a couple of screws and screw through it. And with that little piece of board, especially a little piece of plywood on there, that thing ain't coming out. That nail's not going to go anywhere. This is a way better arrangement. This is what I do. But then I got smart. I understand history and tradition. I also understand getting paid, and I want something that worked. So once I got Angelo's machine and used it once and thought it was ridiculous with nails, I got some threaded rod, ground it to a point. I've got 2 sets of threaded rod, one short and one long, and then I put a couple of nuts, one on each side, and a washer, one on each side. And I can put this through a tight hole and adjust them wherever I want, and they work awesome. Then I can take them off and use them on the next one, or I can move them over here for the next one. This one's chassis has been used a couple times. It's got different holes in it. I've got several hanging on the wall, and I just reconfigure them. I can move this joint if I need to. I can combine parts of this one with parts of another one, and I don't have to throw them away, because if you glue it in place, you'll never use that cross again, because the likelihood that you're going to have the same, unless you have the same job you do over and over again, you probably won't use it again. And to me, that's a waste of money, and I don't want to waste money. So, but this is a very versatile setup to use, because this clamp will go anywhere. You can clamp this, you can pivot it, you can rotate this 4 ways so that this is on top or bottom or left or right, and you may need that for clearance or reach. There are some pointing machines that have a hole drilled through here and a hole drilled through here with a wing nut on there, bolting a nut. That doesn't make any sense at all to me, because it totally limits what you can do. If I have to make the chassis even more complicated to make a new one and drill holes through it, no, I'm not going to do it. To me, it's a mistake. I don't want it. If that's what you like, go for it. I don't think it's a good idea. This arrangement, this machine has far fewer moving parts. This one wing nut loosens it so this pivots, and so that this goes in and out and rotates. And so you can loosen this and still maintain really good control. It also has a barrel-shaped stop on the stylus. And I'll try to get video close-up of all this to lay in here. But when you loosen this, it drops so much that if you're not tight, it's got enough mass that it just drops. It swings nice and smooth. You don't have to push it. It's more rigid, it doesn't flex. It's just overall a lot better machine and a lot better design. And for the equipment you're going to have, you can start as a total beginner with stone carving. And I mean, you barely can do anything with the tools. Never tried it before. And you can get a pointing machine, and if you set it up right and you do it the right way, you're going to know more about stone carving in just 1 or 2 projects than you would have learned on your own futzing around for years. Because you're going to understand where something needs to be in the stone and how to make it be there without wasting stone or wasting time. So like I said, I'll show you how to set things up with foundation points and how to actually point when we get to the angel video, because the angel will be here before we know it. But I would really strongly recommend you considering getting a pointing machine. If you do anything more than just occasional carving, and you want to do something that's really high quality work, whether you're duplicating something you've made or you're trying to replicate something that you already have. And we'll talk about how to set your foundation points and everything. A lot of that has to do with lessons you learned squaring that block of granite, because you'll understand from where plumb blocks are and how things are level or off level. You'll have a better understanding of the relationship of the points to the job, both for the points of the foundation points and with what you shoot on the job. So this is how I learned. The second thing I cut, the second piece of granite that I cut, I pointed a job, and that put me on the path to fast growth. And I know everybody watching this video wants to grow as quickly as they can, because nobody wants to take a lot of extra time just because. This won't necessarily make you a brilliant sculptor, but this will make you an accurate worker. And accuracy is the first step to actually doing good work, and work that'll satisfy you. So I would really strongly consider, you can go online and find pointing machines from a number of suppliers. And for most situations, I think this is the absolute best one to get. But we'll try to put video in. I'll do overviews of both of these so you can see them up close and see what you think. But these are point machines. So my name's Clint Button here at Carolina Sculpture Studio with the virtual stone carving apprenticeship, talking about pointing machines, pluses and minuses, and what works best and what I would avoid. Thanks for coming in. Here's some close-up of the pointing machines. This is Dario's pointing machine that he brought over from Italy around 68, 69 when they came over and went to Alberton. You can see that all the joints are a clamp arrangement, which can allow it to rotate a little bit if it's not clamped really tight or if you bump it, which isn't great. More clamping on the round tube. I got a longer tube that came with it. And then this is a hinge joint clamp for this one ball joint, and then another clamp down here, and then the ball joint for the needle. It has a fairly long, thin needle. About it's not quite twice as long as this other one. And you can see this stop is nowhere as near as robust as the other one. It has an adjustment here where you can give it a turn to stay up a little bit. I've never used that. And this drops okay as long as it's pretty vertical. Now this is Angelo's pointing machine that he gave me in 2007. And his master, Orazio Marcelli, gave it to him in 62. So I'd used this during my apprenticeship on a couple of projects. And then he gave it to me in 2007 because he was very happy with what I had accomplished and was doing. It has fewer joints, just has a clamp. And so it's easy to adjust, it's very robust. This is a real big benefit, this heavy weighted drop. It really goes fast. You can see my chassis is just, there's a nut on top and bottom. Piece of threaded rod. This is just 1/4-inch threaded rod, and I've got 2 sets that I use, and I just drill a tight hole and twist it, thread it through just with a wrench, and then I can tighten it and I can adjust these to whatever height they need very easily. It's a lot easier than using a nail by comparison. That is harder to secure and adjust and everything. Even if you cap it like I showed you with a piece of wood to hold it in place, I really prefer this arrangement. I'll show you, I've got quite a few chassis that we've accumulated over the years because you can put them together and take them apart. There's a few blocks. This is for holding the pointing machine. We've got another fixture to mount to hang the pointing machine. See, you've got a small one here with some more rods, and I've got a big cross-shaped one, and I've got a big one that's shaped like a Y or a V that I used on, I think on the crucifix. But these can be taken apart and put together. You can see this small chassis has got several holes where I reconfigured it multiple times, and just use them over and over again. That's why I like using screws. That's why I like using threaded rod. It just makes more sense for what I'm doing. And of these 2 pointing machines, there's utility in both. But, you know, I've got the pictures. Andy's joint is approximately right here, the breakaway joint to flip this back that came off of Phil Paini's. It was Phil Paini's old machine. So, but this pointing machine's the one that wins for me. I use it. It's the one I reach for. It's a lot faster to use. Really like it. I hope this helps out with pointing machine information a little bit. There's not any real comparison videos out there of which styles to use. If you've got one of the ones that has the hole drilled and the clamp to a bolt through, throw the bolt away and use a clamp. That just doesn't make any sense to me. But this is the one to get. Get them from a variety of sources online, and you'll learn a lot. You'll grow really fast, whether you point everything or just put stuff together so that it's placed properly. It'll really help. Once again, my name's Clint Button here at Carolina Sculpture Studio, talking about pointing machines and what might be the first product comparison review of pointing machines that's ever been put on YouTube. Thanks for coming in.